Welcome back, fellow gardeners. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the Monstera Deliciosa. This is this plant. It actually has another name, which I'll explain later, called the Swiss cheese plant. It's a rainforest plant, and what it does, it attaches itself to the trees, and the aerial roots sort of surround the tree for support. So let's learn about plant care and how to propagate this plant. So my name is Alice and I'm the Red Soil Gardener. Let's start talking about this plant. Now, in the introduction, I talked about these beautiful monsteras, that they are climbers and they do attach themselves on trees in the rainforest. Now, the most interesting thing about it, first of all, is the name. The name Monstera Deliciosa is actually Monstera being this giant, this monster, and Deliciosa talks about the fruit. Now, it does produce a fruit, and I have eaten it. Well, let's say I have tasted it, but it does taste actually a bit like a custard apple, but you've got to get used to the taste. Now, the other thing about this plant, why they also call it a cheese plant, is because it forms, as it grows first, initially, it actually, the baby leaves actually come out as a heart-shaped leaf. But as it matures, as in this one, what happens is you get the splits and then you get the holes. And that is what we call a monstera. Now, the reason why you get these splits and the holes, being a rainforest plant, and as it's growing up this tree, and you do get little suckers, baby suckers, that forms at the base, is it forms these holes and the splits so that the sun can actually come in and actually give the sunlight to its undergrowth. So let's go and look at the plant, which I have to rescue at the table, and I will show you exactly how to propagate it. And as we do this, we'll talk about plant care. Let's move on. So talking about the monstera, I've bought my monstera. This one I've totally not looked after it. So I think it is a good example to actually start with it. And I will tell you what I'm going to do. Now, this particular plant, I had it in my sitting room, but in a low light area. And I actually thought that it was getting enough light and that it was good to go. And actually, I've been so busy over the last few months, I simply ignored it and didn't even monitor it. And when I did bring it out the other day, I saw, first of all, it's very leggy. And second thing is these lovely baby leaves are sort of curled. So I thought, let's have a look at it and see how we're going to rejuvenate it, first of all, and also talk about the problems of monstera when you do have it in low light. Now, what happens is that when you do have your monstera in low light, is it does get leggy, because basically monsteras do like indirect sun, but they don't tolerate so well with low light. Now, what happens with low light, as you've seen with this monstera compared to the one we've seen there, is that it's become really, really leggy and everything doesn't look well. Is that what happens is the internode here, the gap between each node does get longer, as in this case, but it's not supposed to happen like that. Once you do put it in indirect light, is that getting some sort of light is that it actually blooms and you find that you will get more leaves, but then you won't get this lanky look. Another thing about monsteras is that if you do put them in low light, and as we mentioned before, they do start with the heart-shaped leaf, and as juveniles, but as they grow, get into maturity, you do get the split. Now, in low light, you may not get your split or your holes. So if I look at this plant, I would think to myself, This is where I started with the plant when I put it in a low light area. So you do get the big mature leaves. And later, as the sitting room did get not so much sun because we're going through the cold season and you don't get so much light coming filtering through, this is the section that actually it started getting low light. So you do get this very lanky and you get big gaps in the internode. So once we've established that the Monstera does like bright indirect sun, don't put it in full sun. Now I did that once where I was doing my sitting room, took my Monsteras out and then suddenly left it in the sun. And what happens is that it does scorch the leaves. Sun scorches the leaves. So even when you do have your Monstera inside your home as an indoor plant, try not to put it against a window. Do move it slightly back where it gets just bright indirect sun. As if you put it close to the window, what happens, you will scorch your leaves and they will turn brown and they won't be attractive. Now, what sort of soil does the Monstera want? Being a rainforest plant, we're looking at well-draining soil, something where the water totally sort of drains through, but keeps the soil moist. But the whole thing is you have to make sure with Monsteras that you don't have it waterlogged, because that will actually lead to root rot and you will lose your plant. Basically, once you've drained your Monstera and ensured that the moisture is still in the soil, the next time you want to water it, do your finger test and make sure that it dries between the feet. And if it is dry, do again give it its drink. So again, what I'd like to emphasize with watering, what you need to do, I prefer to do, is once you have your Monstera in a pot and you have your drainage holes, I usually give it 2 runs of water. The first one, let the water actually go in and you see the water coming out of the drainage hole. And then after a while, give it maybe about another 5-10 minutes. Again, do the water again, and this time is when I always believe is when the water actually does sort of sit in the soil, so you are retaining the moisture, because sometimes if you do run the water through, it doesn't have time to actually seep into the soil. So once again is in between feeds, make sure it's dry in between feeds, do your finger test to make sure that the soil is dry, then give it 2 runs of water. Now, a lot of people are asking about fertilizing your plant. Now, the best time to fertilize your plant is during the growing season, which would be spring and summer, where the plant is active. Now, the thing is that sometimes we do over-fertilize our plants and you will see the reaction on the leaves. However, the only way I would actually fertilize is let the water drain through first and then get your liquid fertilizer, an NPK, and then mix it and then do it after you've given your plant soil a good drench. The beauty about Monsteras is actually it's all about the leaf, and it's about looking at it and thinking, oh, that's a Swiss cheese plant. But what happens is that we do get tempted as gardeners, is that we're so used to always turning your plant around. Now what happens is that with Monsteras, if you keep turning it around, is you may get twisted stems and the plant looks the other side because it's looking for the sun. The best thing is find a location where you do have your bright indirect sun and just leave it there. Just leave it there. So in the end, your foliage is actually facing outward as opposed to being twisted, and some leaves are at the back. Now, the other thing about Monsteras, because they actually come out of a single vine and then you get your leaves forming, is that what happens is it starts moving that direction. So the best thing for you to do is actually stake it. The reason being, as it starts growing this way, what happens is it's going to tip over. So all you need to do is stake it up. So what you do is just get some sort of stick and just secure it up so that in the end it doesn't get into a situation that it starts moving on the side and falling over. So you keep it completely upright. Once you have supported your plant, as for a lot of people is you look at these aerial roots and you think, what am I going to do with it? Now, what I usually do recommend is you could actually take it, the aerial root, and stick it in the soil, because also the aerial root will get rooting, so it will actually anchor your plant and make it stronger in terms of standing up. So now we're going to see what we can do to help this plant. We may have to start from scratch by propagating it, so in the end whatever we've got has more strength and I won't neglect the plant. Now, another thing about monsteras, my poor little baby here, which we're going to actually help it, is do clean the leaves. So all you need to do is just get a cloth. And once you do get that cloth, what you do is just wipe all that dust from the leaves. Very simple. All you need is to actually a bit of dishwashing liquid with water and just put it on a cotton pad and then clean it. Now, this is a great time to actually inspect your plant, because as you clean it, you're looking at the back, you're looking everywhere, making sure you don't have mealybugs, scales, and all those pests. But by cleaning it, what happens, it allows the plant to actually get more sunlight for photosynthesis and feed your plant. So now, as we mentioned earlier, it does have all these suckers. Now, depending on you, I mean, I don't really mind these suckers, but that means it actually is taking extra energy away from your plant. You could actually use that sucker to propagate your plant again and just remove it from the base of the plant. So now we go into propagation and try to save my little monstera here, which has been so neglected, and let's revive it through propagation so that I can also make many and also give a chance to this plant to actually take off. Now, when we do go into propagating the monstera, it is a very simple process. So one thing is that you can get your monstera and just divide it. And I think this is the most easiest bit when you're trying to do a propagation, because you can, with the section that you've actually cut off, you could actually do a water propagation as I've done here, where you just simply stick it in soil while you're waiting for to see what you want to do with it. This I had picked out of this I had picked out about a month ago, and it has a long taproot. But what I've done is, by sticking it in the water, is I've ended up with rooting. And so what I'm going to do, as I haven't decided what to do, is just a bit more rooting, and I'm going to put it in a pot. So water propagation does work. And if you notice, is I am getting a new leaf from that water propagation, and I'll show you how you can do this. I'm actually just going to tip it out, and then we're going to repot it, and then we're going to take sections of it and then start our propagation. Okay. So now I have actually uprooted my monstera, neglected monstera, and what I've noticed is, first of all, I don't have enough rooting for the age of this plant. So there's obviously, I think initially when I did plant it, I didn't put it in the right soil mixture, because as I look is that I need to have a soil mixture that will actually drain a bit of perlite if you have, but at the same time I have my soil here, which is actually has a bit of compost, it has a bit of pumice for absorbing the water and also allowing the drainage to go through. So I am going to actually put it in brand new soil that is a bit more airy, like this. With monsteras is that if you do want to do a propagation, which is actually multiplying your stock, what you need to do is simply cut it. And as I mentioned earlier, is you can do a water propagation or leave it in water while you're waiting to think what you want to do with it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to cut it, divide it, and make 3 sections, and I will show you how to do it. So you go to your monstera and you just snip below the node. Now, a node in a plant is where the rooting will take place. Second thing is that's where you get the rooting hormones happening, and it will form roots. And so what I'm simply going to do is I have the node here, which is clearly marked with a division there. And all I'm going to do is go below the node and snip it. So what I've created here is a monstera plant, this one, which we're going to try to rejuvenate it because the rooting, as we see, is not so good. And then we have this monstera, which we could actually plant it in a pot. And I would keep the aerial roots because your aerial roots also does root and it does anchor the plant. And then I'm thinking seriously, as the top bit of my poor monstera doesn't look that healthy, but what I can do is actually even pot that one. So what I'm going to do again is look for that node here and just simply cut under the node. And again, as we know, it's going to start rooting at the node. And I'm going to keep the aerial root like that. And so basically I have 3 monsteras. So I'm in the process of cleaning this one. I think what we'll do with this one is we'll put it in soil. I'm going to nip a bit of this because what I've noticed is that aerial root doesn't really look, was a bit rotten at the side. I'm just going to also remove where the last leaf was, just to make it neat. And that's what I'm going to propagate in here. Twirl this round and put it in the soil, and I'll have 1 plant. So let me do that. So all I'm going to do, pour in my soil, and I will simply cover it. There you go. So that is 1 plant and it will do well. Now with this plant here, what I'm going to simply do is I'm just going to put it in water. I'm going to take my water vase, well, bottle, and I'm simply going to put the aerial root in like that. And I will keep it there in indirect light in my kitchen. And once I do get rooting, I will transplant that. Now with this monstera, which actually has seen better days, if I look at the rooting, these are aerial roots there, and we see that they do have rooting. But I think what I'm going to do with this one is actually remove it up to here, maybe. There. And I'm going to clean it a bit. And then what I'll do with it while we wait is I'm just going to place it, maybe I'll remove this aerial root there, snip here, but I'm just going to simply just for today, and then I'll move it into water, is I'm going to put it in here like that. And let it share with our other monstera there. And once I do get appropriate rooting, I will individually separate it and actually repot it. Always ensure that you do have an aerial root and you do have like a little bud on the plant, because that's where your leaves are going to come from. But so we've left that one here. This one, which we have actually cleaned and put it inside water, I will move it into its own individual water propagation. And once I do see more rooting on these two, I will eventually transplant it into soil. So there you are, fellow gardeners. What a messy job saving my little monstera, but hopefully it will pick up, and just give it, it's always about patience. Within 2-3 months, I should start getting good rooting, and I should start seeing a little leaf coming up, and I'll be really happy. So don't forget to like and share, and also subscribe. Don't forget to press that notification button. And we are on Instagram. I do actually post a lot of photos there of my garden, of whatever is in season, all the flowers in season. And do send me a comment there. I'm on YouTube. Do send me a comment. And I always do try to answer it. And so go and get yourself a monstera and do look after it. These ones were looking a bit weak, but soon I'm sure I will have a plant like the one previously shown. So have a lovely day and happy gardening.